That night, the rain poured heavily, wind howling through the cracks in the windows like distant whispers. I, Kane, sat by the fireplace, holding a glass of homemade liquor to warm myself. The flames danced in the old living room, bringing a bit of warmth against the bone-chilling cold outside. Everything seemed peaceful, yet my mind was flooded with memories of my closest friends, Finn, Henry, and Liam. It had been 20 years since we decided to explore the abandoned school, where the villagers still whispered about the mysterious death of Ms. Caryln. I remember that day clearly, as if it happened just yesterday. Finn, with his boundless curiosity, was always the one to initiate daring plans. Henry, ever cautious, would never admit that he too was intrigued. And Liam, as quiet as usual, but his eyes always carried a sense of determination. I often wondered what drove us to step into that school on October 5th, World Teachers' Day. The rumors had drawn us into that adventure. Dusk began to fall as we approached the old school. It loomed before us like a haunting shadow, its peeling walls and rusty gates swinging loosely, as if waiting for someone to enter. The silence was only broken by the light wind and rain seeping through the dark corners. Henry was the first to hesitate. "I don't think this is a good idea," he muttered, glancing at the shattered windows. "You always worry too much, Henry. We're just here for a look. What's there to be scared of?" Finn scoffed, trying to appear calm. "Fun? You think it's fun to come here late at night to explore a place they say is haunted?" Henry shot back. "I don't want to get involved with something I don't understand." Tension between Finn and Henry quickly escalated, but Finn persisted. "What difference does it make during the day? It's at night when strange things happen. Don't you want to know the truth?" I intervened, trying to ease things. "Finn's right. We chose to come at night because of the rumors. The villagers say the school comes alive after dark." Liam, who had been silent, finally spoke up. "Why argue? We're already here, aren't we? Let's just explore the school." No one said another word. We stepped into the school, feeling every heavy breath as the dark hallway unfolded before us. We ventured deeper into the school, each step feeling like it was swallowed by the oppressive darkness. The air grew colder, as if something invisible was squeezing the breath from us. The moldy walls and cracked ceiling bore scars of death and neglect. Strange, ghostly sounds echoed faintly from afar, like whispers from another world. Finn looked up at the ceiling, his eyes flickering with fear. "Feels like someone's watching us from up there," he muttered, but no one replied. The eerie silence heightened our senses. Henry, as usual, was the first to move forward. He approached a classroom with a worn sign, barely legible, Ms. Carylyn's room. The rumors of her mysterious death flooded my mind. Her passing had forever changed the school, though no one truly knew what had happened. Some said she committed suicide, others claimed she was murdered by her own students. Finn pushed open the door, which groaned with an agonizing screech, as though it had been shut for an eternity. The room was dark, only scattered. Broken desks and chairs remained, covered in dust. But what froze us all was the blackboard, still intact, with a single message scrawled in large, jagged white chalk. "I will never leave." Henry recoiled instantly, his face pale. Who wrote that?" he stammered. We all stood frozen, our hearts pounding in our chests. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway, heavy, deliberate, and menacing. Finn glanced at me, his eyes wide with panic. "Someone's here." Liam, usually calm, couldn't hold it together. "We need to get out of here. Now." We rushed toward the door, but it slammed shut before we could escape. None of us had touched it. Whatever was in this school was toying with our fear. A mocking, eerie laugh echoed from a corner of the room, cold and chilling. I felt my heart skip a beat, my breath catching in my throat. Finn banged on the door, but it wouldn't budge. "Damn it, it's locked!" he yelled, his voice trembling. Henry tried to open the windows, but it was as if some invisible force was blocking every exit. Then, without warning, our flashlights flickered and went out, leaving us in complete darkness. A soft whisper, barely audible, surrounded us from every direction. "She couldn't leave, and neither will you." I tried to stay calm, but a freezing chill coursed through my body. I turned to look at Liam, but he stood frozen, his eyes wide, staring at a dark corner of the room. "Liam, what is it?" I asked. But he could only point, his mouth unable to form words. From the darkness, a faint, ghostly figure began to emerge. A woman draped in a long dress, her tangled hair covering her face. Her body hovered a few inches above the ground, like a real spirit. We all stood paralyzed, unable to move, our eyes locked on the figure approaching. She said nothing, merely gliding past us, her hollow eyes piercing into each one of us. A soft whisper followed. "Ms. Caryln." Finn stepped back, his throat dry. "It can't be." The ghost stopped in front of Henry, her cold, empty eyes drilling into him. Henry screamed in terror, falling backward as the ghost bent down and whispered something in his ear. He clutched his head, screaming, "Get away from me! Don't touch me!" We could do nothing but stand and watch in horror as Henry writhed, but the ghost vanished instantly, as if she had never been there. Henry collapsed on the floor, gasping for air, his eyes red with fear. "We have to get out of here now!" Finn shouted, trying to pull Henry up, but the door remained locked tight. The room grew stifling, as if the very space around us was trying to swallow us whole. I felt an oppressive weight pressing down on my chest, as if the entire atmosphere wanted to consume us. We were still trapped in the dark room, fear and anxiety creeping into every breath. Henry no longer seemed like himself, mumbling things no one could understand. Finn and Liam exchanged worried glances, while I struggled to keep calm. But how could I, when the darkness seemed to swallow us whole? "We need to get out of here," I said, trying to take control. "Finn, Henry is losing it. He needs fresh air." Finn turned to me, his eyes tense but steady. "But the door's locked, Kane. We're trapped." Suddenly, Henry stood up, yanking away from Finn's grip. His eyes were wild and red. "No! She wants us to go to the last room down the hall. She's waiting for us there," he muttered. "Henry, calm down." I lunged toward him, trying to stop him, but some strange force allowed him to break free from my grasp easily. Finn and Liam followed, and we had no choice but to chase after him. I had no idea what had taken over Henry, but he wasn't himself anymore. We moved down the dark hallway, my flashlight flickering as if it was about to die. Every footstep echoed unnervingly, like someone was watching us. I glanced around, unable to shake the feeling that something or someone was following us. Henry stopped in front of a room, and I felt a surge of dread. It was the last room in the hallway, the one rumored to be where Ms. Caryln had died. The old room had its windows sealed from the inside, but when Henry touched the door, it opened smoothly, as if it had been waiting for us. "This is it," Henry whispered, walking inside without hesitation. Finn, Liam, and I exchanged uncertain glances. But before we could react, Henry was already deep inside the room. Inside, there was nothing but darkness and a single, dust-covered desk. A cracked mirror hung on the wall. I looked into the mirror and was horrified to see, not just the four of us, but a woman with tangled hair standing right behind me, her face hidden. I spun around, but no one was there. A cold shiver ran down my spine. "Kane, do you see it?" Liam stammered, his eyes wide with fear. I nodded, unable to speak. The figure was still in the mirror, slowly getting closer. I turned again, but only the suffocating darkness surrounded us. Suddenly, Henry collapsed to the floor, clutching his head, screaming in despair. "She won't let us leave! She won't let us go!" Henry's screams echoed in the room, mixing with a ghostly, mocking laugh from the mirror. Terror surged through me, but I tried to stay calm. "Finn, pull Henry out of here!" I shouted. Finn and Liam rushed to help Henry, but the room began to shake and a loud knock reverberated from the walls. I looked at the mirror again, and the woman's figure now stood right in front of us, her face obscured, but I could feel the cold hatred radiating from her. "We need to get out now!" I yelled, my voice trembling with fear. We dragged Henry out of the room, the door slamming shut behind us. The mocking laughter still echoed in the air, and I realized we had stepped into a game we could never win. The group staggered out of the last room in the hallway, their breath heavy and echoing in the oppressive darkness. The door behind us slammed shut unexpectedly, as if the school itself was trying to trap us inside. Henry was still in shock, his eyes filled with terror, while Finn and Liam struggled to keep him steady. "Kane, what do we do now?" Finn asked, his voice trembling with stress. I had no answer. Everything had spiraled out of control the moment we stepped into this cursed school. "Keep going," I sighed, trying to steady my nerves. "We have to find a way out. There's no other option." We started groping our way through the darkness, retracing our steps through the same hallway we had entered. But something was wrong. The hallway seemed longer than before, as if it were stretching and distorting with every step. I glanced around, and the sensation that something was watching us became undeniable. Finn pointed his flashlight around, its dim light flickering across the peeling walls. Suddenly, another door appeared. "We didn't pass this earlier," he muttered. The door looked ordinary, but there was something unsettling about it. The nameplate above had been scratched off, leaving only jagged marks. Henry, now somewhat composed, blurted out, "She wants us to go in here." I didn't want to trust Henry anymore, but curiosity overtook fear. I glanced at Finn and Liam, and they both nodded. We approached the door together, the hinges creaking as it slowly opened. Inside, the room was empty except for a broken desk and an old wooden chair. But what chilled me to the core was the large white chalk writing on the opposite wall. "Welcome back." The air in the room felt heavier, as if an unseen force was pressing down on us. "Kane, look," Liam whispered, pointing toward the chair. Out of nowhere, a faint figure appeared, floating in the air as if formed from the cold atmosphere itself. We froze. The figure became clearer, and finally, we saw the pale face of Ms. Caryln, lifeless, with dark, hollow eyes. My heart pounded wildly as she drifted closer. None of us dared to move, the wind howling through the window like the distant sighs of forsaken souls. "You've returned," Ms. Caryln whispered, her voice cold and otherworldly. "You promised me, but you abandoned me." I didn't know what to say. We had never met her, never made any promises, but her words were laced with anger and deep sorrow. Finn stepped forward, his hands clenched, his voice shaky. "Ms. Caryln, we never meant to abandon you. We just want to understand what happened." She didn't respond. She merely hovered there, her hollow eyes locked on Finn. Then she slowly began to fade away, dissolving into the darkness, leaving the room empty and heavy with a sense of unfinished business. Just then, a cold wind swept through, strong enough to make the windows and furniture tremble. The door slammed shut behind us, and I realized there was no way out. "Run!" I screamed, but no one had time to react. The ground beneath us shook and the darkness around us grew denser, as if trying to consume everything. A scream echoed from behind me, but when I turned, all I saw was Finn, Henry, and Liam struggling against invisible forces. The wind, the footsteps, the panicked breathing, all merged into a chaotic blur with no escape in sight. We didn't know what to do, only that once you stepped into this place, there was no easy way out. The room began to shake violently. The walls echoed with a deep rumble, as if something massive was moving beneath the ground. I struggled to keep my balance, but the floor felt like it was collapsing, pushing everyone into panic. The darkness was no longer just a vague presence. It had become something alive, surrounding us, trying to drain the last bit of life from us. "Finn! Henry! Liam! Run!" I screamed in desperation, but no one moved. The darkness poured in from all sides like thick smoke, engulfing everything. Finn was the first to collapse, his face pale as though all his energy had been drained. Henry and Liam tried to pull him up, but the harder they struggled, the tighter the darkness seemed to squeeze. The wind screeched, twisting into distorted sounds, like cold, mocking laughter from some distant place. My senses blurred, as if I could no longer distinguish between reality and nightmare. Then, suddenly, I felt a chilling cold spread from behind me. I turned and froze in place when I saw Ms. Caryln, no longer a vague shadow, but a solid figure standing right next to us. Her face was clear now, a crooked smile and her sunken dark eyes seemed like endless voids. She looked straight at me, her icy gaze squeezing my heart tight. She raised her hand, her long, bony fingers stretched toward me. "You can't escape," Ms. Caryln whispered, her voice echoing from all directions. "We just want to leave. We don't want to hurt anyone," I shouted, stepping back in desperation. Ms. Caryln laughed, a cold, cruel sound that paralyzed me. "You stepped in here. You belong to this place now." I felt something heavy pressing against my chest, making it hard to breathe. I looked over at Finn, Henry, and Liam. They were being swallowed by the darkness, their eyes wide with terror. Finn collapsed again, gasping for breath, while Henry struggled to lift him, but it was no use. The invisible force pulling them down was too strong. "No, it can't end like this," I roared, trying to break free from the darkness, but everything was becoming too overwhelming. Just then, the door to the room burst open with a loud bang, as if someone had kicked it down. A bright white light shone in from somewhere, momentarily driving back the terrifying darkness. The three of us stood in shock, unable to believe what we were seeing. Ms. Caryln vanished instantly, disappearing into thin air. The darkness retreated, as if defeated by the sudden light. Henry was the first to react. "Run! Run now!" he shouted. We didn't need another word. I pulled Finn up off the ground, and we sprinted out of the room, down the seemingly endless hallway. Our gasping breaths echoed through the halls, but this time, it felt like we had a chance to escape. We raced past the locked doors, through the eerie halls that had once felt like inescapable traps. The howling wind and familiar knocking sounds still echoed behind us, but none of us dared to look back. I didn't know who or what had opened that door, but we couldn't pass up the chance. Finally, we reached the exit. The rusty iron gate had somehow swung open, as if it had been waiting for us to flee. None of us paused to think. We sprinted through the gate without looking back, leaving behind the haunted darkness and unspeakable fear. As we left the school, the darkness suddenly vanished, and the soft glow of the moon illuminated the path ahead. We stopped, panting, and turned to look back at the abandoned school. It still stood there, lonely in the night, but it no longer seemed like the terrifying place we had just escaped from. What just happened?" Liam panted, his hand trembling as he grabbed mine. "I don't know," I replied, my voice hoarse. "But I think we're out, at least for now." We stood there for a long time, saying nothing more. We knew that even though we had escaped, Ms. Caryln's ghost and the mysteries of that school would continue to haunt our minds, lingering with us forever. And perhaps one day, when we returned, she would be waiting for us again. We stood there panting after escaping the school, thinking we were safe. But as I turned around, my vision suddenly went dark. A sharp pain shot through my head, and everything became blurry. I heard a familiar whisper in my mind. "Come back. I need you." My body was no longer my own. No one understood what was happening as I abruptly turned and sprinted back toward the school. "Kane, what the hell are you doing?" Finn shouted, but I couldn't answer. All I knew was that I had to return. Miss Caryln's call echoed in my mind like a command I couldn't resist. Finn, Henry, and Liam panicked and ran after me, trying to pull me back, but I wouldn't stop. The sensation of darkness engulfed my mind more and more, drowning me under her control. Everything blurred away, leaving only the overwhelming need to return to the school. The iron gate was wide open, and I ran straight through without stopping for even a moment. "Kane, stop!" Finn tried to grab my arm, but it was useless. I had already crossed the threshold of the abandoned school once again. As we re-entered the dark hallway, the space around us began to change in strange ways. The walls stretched and distorted, as though the school itself was reacting to our presence. I felt like I was being pulled into another place, another reality. In the thick darkness, Ms. Caryln's whisper returned, clearer this time. "I need you to uncover the truth." My death was no accident. Suddenly, I stopped in the middle of the hallway. Finn, Henry, and Liam rushed to grab me, but I no longer resisted. In that moment, everything became clear to me. Ms. Caryln was communicating with me, not with words, but with images. Fuzzy memories flashed before my eyes. Ms. Caryln standing in a classroom, arguing with someone, her face filled with fear. Then a hard shove. She fell to the ground and flames suddenly erupted, consuming everything. She hadn't committed suicide. She was murdered. Henry stared at me, wide-eyed with shock. "Kane, are you okay? What's happening?" I saw it," I gasped. "Ms. Caryln, she didn't kill herself. Someone murdered her." Finn was stunned. "Murdered? How do you know?" "She showed me these images," I replied, my voice trembling. "She was pushed and burned alive. She can't rest because the truth hasn't come out." Liam looked around nervously. "So who killed her?" What are we supposed to do? Ms. Caryln continued speaking through me, her whisper echoing in my head. Find the attendance book. Find the name of the one who betrayed me. They tried to hide it, but the book still exists. The attendance book, I said out loud, unable to control my voice. We have to find it. She says the name of her killer is in there. Finn looked at me skeptically. How do we even know where to look? At that moment, I saw a clear image of the room where the book was hidden. It was in a secret basement we had never seen. The records room. In the basement, I muttered. We have to go down there. No one objected. The group quickly made their way down to the basement, where locked doors hid secrets that had been buried for 20 years. We descended the creaky wooden steps, getting closer to the truth, but also drawing nearer to the darkness that Ms. Caryln had warned us about. We rushed down the stairs to the basement, the old wooden steps creaking beneath our feet, as if they could collapse at any moment. The flickering light from our flashlights barely illuminated the damp, dark space. The smell of mold and moisture filled the air, making me cover my nose. Below us was a long hallway lined with rusted doors, all sealed shut. The last door, I whispered, driven by Ms. Caryln's voice echoing in my mind. The attendance book is there. The group headed toward the final door. Finn's hand trembled as he slowly pushed the old door open. It creaked loudly, echoing through the silent basement. Inside was a room filled with dusty file cabinets and old bookshelves. In the center was a table covered in dust with the attendance book we had been searching for. Henry stepped forward, his hands shaking as he opened the book. Inside, the yellowed pages were filled with the names of students and teachers from years ago. His eyes scanned the names quickly, then stopped at a particular page. Here it is, Henry said, his voice choking. This name, we all leaned in to see. It was the name of a teacher none of us recognized. John Willows, I read aloud. History teacher. Instantly, images flooded my mind. Ms. Caryln arguing with this man, anger and betrayal in their eyes. He had pushed her to the ground and left her to burn in the flames. Why was she killed? Finn asked, his voice filled with both anger and unease. John Willows, I whispered. He betrayed her. She knew something about him. Maybe she found out what he was doing, something bad, and he couldn't let her live. At that moment, the room began to shake. Cold, eerie sounds echoed from the hallway, like wind whistling through cracks, but mixed with what sounded more like distant screams. Finn turned, his eyes wide. We need to get out of here, right now. But before we could move, the door slammed shut violently. Our flashlights flickered, then went out completely, leaving the room in total darkness. No, this can't be happening, Liam screamed, trying desperately to open the door, but it was no use. The air in the room grew heavier, as if the darkness itself had come alive, trapping us in a corner of the world with no escape. Then, a voice echoed in my head. I've waited too long. Bring the truth to light, or you will never leave. I knew it was Ms. Caryln's voice. Her spirit had grown weary of the silence, of the truth being buried for too long. She didn't just want justice. She needed us to expose the truth, so that the one who betrayed her would pay. We have to uncover the full truth about Ms. Caryln's death, I said, staring at the attendance book. She won't let us go until the truth is revealed. In that instant, the door slowly creaked open again, and an eerie stillness filled the air. We looked at each other, understanding that this wasn't the end. The school and Miss Caryln's death still held many dark secrets that remained undiscovered. Kane, do you feel like this isn't over? Henry asked, his eyes full of uncertainty. I nodded, the lingering cold still creeping through every corner. Not yet. The truth is still hidden, and we'll have to come back. Here's something to look forward to. Part 2 of the story will be on my channel. I'll tell it to you every night before bed.